Most people think working the night shift is easy. No traffic, no crowds, no managers looking over your shoulder. Just long hours, empty buildings, and enough silence to make time feel like it's standing still. But ask anyone who's worked overnight, and they'll tell you the same thing. Things feel different after midnight. Buildings sound alive. Shadows seem to move when you aren't looking directly at them. And sometimes you'll swear you saw someone standing just outside your line of sight. Tonight, I'll be sharing 3 disturbing stories from people who learned that being alone at work can be far more terrifying than they ever imagined. So lock your doors, turn down the lights, and let's begin. Story 1. The customer who never entered back. When I was 22, I worked the overnight shift at a small convenience store just outside of town. The store sat near a highway exit, surrounded by empty fields and a few abandoned buildings. During the day, it stayed busy with commuters and truck drivers, but after midnight, business slowed to almost nothing. Most nights, I worked alone from 11 at night until 6 in the morning. My routine rarely changed. I'd restock shelves, clean the coffee station, and watch the security cameras behind the register whenever things got quiet. Around 2 in the morning, I was wiping down the counter when I heard the familiar chime of the front door opening. I looked up automatically. Nobody was there. At first, I assumed the wind had triggered the sensor. The front doors were old, and occasionally they acted up. Still, I walked around the counter and checked outside. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no customers, nothing. I shrugged it off and returned to work. A few minutes later, I sat down behind the register and glanced at the security monitor. That's when I froze. Camera 1, which faced the front entrance, showed a man standing inside the store. He was tall and wore a dark hoodie with the hood pulled over his head. He wasn't moving, just standing near the entrance. I looked up from the monitor toward the actual doorway. Nobody. I looked back at the screen. The man was still there. My stomach dropped. I stood up slowly and walked toward the entrance while keeping my eyes fixed on the monitor. As I got closer, the figure disappeared from the screen. I checked every aisle, the bathroom, the storage room. Nothing. There was nobody inside the building. Trying to calm myself down, I told myself the camera feed had glitched. Maybe it was a delayed recording. Maybe the system was malfunctioning. I went back behind the register and pulled up the playback footage. The video showed the front doors opening by themselves. Then a man walked inside. Except there was one problem. The doors never moved when he entered. He simply appeared on the other side of the glass, as if he'd walked through the doors without opening them. I rewound the footage 3 times. Same thing every time. The man stood near the entrance for almost 30 seconds before turning his head directly toward the camera. Even with the poor video quality, I could tell something was wrong. His face looked blurry, not out of focus. More like the camera couldn't process it correctly. Then he smiled. The footage suddenly cut to static. Every monitor in the store went black for about 5 seconds. When the cameras came back online, the man was gone. I called my manager immediately. He drove over, checked the footage himself, and told me the security system was probably failing. The next day, the company replaced every camera in the store. I asked the technician if he'd found anything wrong with the old system. He looked confused. He said there wasn't any footage saved from that night. The entire recording between 2 and 3 in the morning was missing. I quit 2 weeks later. A few months after leaving, I ran into another former employee. When I mentioned the cameras, she went quiet. Then she asked me a question I'll never forget. Did you see the man by the front door too? I never asked for details. I didn't want to know. Story 2. The Closed Floor. For 6 years, I worked as a janitor at a hospital. Most people think hospitals are creepy at night, but honestly, you get used to it. The strange noises, the quiet hallways, the occasional patient wandering where they shouldn't be. Eventually, it all becomes normal. At least, most of it does. The hospital where I worked had 7 floors. The 6th floor had been closed for renovations after a pipe burst caused major water damage. Nobody was allowed up there. The elevators wouldn't stop on 6, and the stairwell doors required a special access card. At least that's how it was supposed to work. One night around 3 in the morning, I was cleaning the emergency waiting area when my radio crackled. Security asked if I could check the east elevator. Someone had reported that the call button for the 6th floor kept lighting up. I laughed and told them the floor was closed. Security agreed. That's why they wanted me to look at it. When I reached the elevator, the number 6 button was glowing. I pressed the button panel reset key. The light disappeared. 5 seconds later, it lit back up. I called security. They checked the system remotely. According to the elevator logs, someone had requested the 6th floor from inside the elevator. That wasn't possible. The elevator doors opened. Empty. I stepped inside. As soon as the doors closed, the elevator began moving upward. Floor 2, 3, 4, 5. Then it stopped. The display read 6. The doors remained closed. I pressed the button for the lobby. Nothing happened. Then I heard it. A knocking sound. 3 slow knocks, coming from the other side of the elevator doors. I grabbed my radio. No signal. The knocking happened again. 3 knocks. Then a voice. Soft enough that I almost missed it. "Can you let me in?" Every hair on my body stood up. The voice sounded like an elderly woman. I backed against the wall and pressed every button I could find. The doors suddenly opened. The hallway outside was completely dark. No construction lights, no equipment, no warning signs. Just darkness. Then, at the far end of the hallway, I saw someone standing there. A woman wearing a hospital gown, perfectly still. I hit the close door button repeatedly. The doors shut. The elevator immediately dropped back to the lobby. When security arrived, we reviewed the elevator logs. According to the system, the elevator had never left the 1st floor. The maintenance supervisor checked the 6th floor the next morning. The power was disconnected. There shouldn't have been any lights. There shouldn't have been any working elevators. And there definitely shouldn't have been anyone standing in the hallway. A month later, I learned something I wish I'd never heard. Years before the renovations, an elderly patient with dementia had wandered onto the 6th floor during construction. Nobody realized she was missing until the next morning. They found her near the east elevator. According to the report, she'd repeatedly pressed the call button trying to get back downstairs. Story 3. Motion detected. A few years ago, I worked as an overnight security guard for a warehouse scheduled to be demolished. The building had been abandoned for almost a year after the company relocated. My job was simple: stay inside the security office, monitor the cameras, walk the property every 2 hours. Most nights, nothing happened. The building sat alone at the edge of an industrial park. After midnight, the entire area felt deserted. No traffic, no nearby businesses, just empty roads and old warehouses. The company had installed motion detectors throughout the building because people occasionally broke in to steal scrap metal. On my 3rd week, I was working the midnight shift when an alert appeared on my monitor. Motion detected. Zone C. The old shipping area. I checked the camera feed. Nothing. No movement. No people. I grabbed my flashlight and did a quick patrol. The shipping area was empty. I reset the alarm and returned to the office. 10 minutes later, it happened again. Motion detected. Zone C. This time, I watched the camera carefully. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something. A shadow moved across the far wall. It wasn't human-shaped. It looked too tall, and it moved too quickly. I rewound the footage. The shadow crossed the wall in less than a second, fast enough that I almost missed it. I called my supervisor. He told me animals sometimes triggered the sensors, so I went back out. As I entered the shipping area, I noticed something strange. The air felt colder, not slightly colder, freezing. My flashlight swept across rows of rusted shelves and broken equipment. Everything was silent. Then I heard footsteps above me, heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate. The second floor had been condemned months earlier. Nobody was supposed to be up there. I called out. No response. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then, every motion detector in the building activated at once. My radio exploded with alarm notifications. Zone A, Zone D, Zone F. Motion everywhere. I ran back to the security office and locked the door. Every camera feed showed movement, shadows crossing hallways, figures standing just outside the range of the cameras. One monitor showed someone standing in the center of the shipping area, tall, motionless, watching the camera. I zoomed in. The image distorted. The figure didn't have a face, just darkness where its features should have been. Then all the monitors shut off. Complete blackness. My radio went silent. Even my phone lost service. For nearly 5 minutes, I sat alone in that office, listening to footsteps moving through the hallway outside. Slow, measured, back and forth, back and forth. Then they stopped directly outside my door. A loud bang shook the handle. Once, twice, 3 times. I held my breath. After what felt like forever, the footsteps moved away. A few seconds later, the power returned. The cameras came back online. Every alert disappeared. The rest of the shift passed quietly. When the morning guard arrived, I told him everything. He stared at me for a moment before asking if I'd heard the footsteps. When I said yes, he nodded. Apparently, I wasn't the first person. 3 guards had already quit after reporting similar experiences. The company demolished the warehouse 2 weeks later. I drove past the site a month after it was torn down. The building was gone, but the old security office was still standing. As I passed by, I glanced toward the window. For just a second, I thought I saw someone inside, watching me. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, be sure to subscribe for more true horror every week. And if you have a disturbing experience of your own, send it to the email in the description below. Who knows? Your story might be featured in a future video. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, some places become much more dangerous after dark.